Welcome into the Sports Objective. We appreciate everyone tuning in whenever and however you're watching or listening, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And our show can also be found pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, TuneIn Radio, SoundCloud, and Spotify. It's hard to believe, but we're less than a month away from the start of the college baseball season. And over the last week, we've had a chance to catch up with 8 of the 17 Division I baseball coaches around the state of North Carolina. And today we're very excited to be joined by a guy who played in this state at Davidson, has been a tremendous coach at 3 different programs now. And welcome back to the show, Duke head baseball coach Chris Pollard. Coach, we appreciate your time.
Bubba, thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. We had snow on the ground, so that means the season's just around the corner, right, Coach? And
That's right.
Before we dive into this year's club, just talk a little about that 2021 season. 33-22 was your final record. You won the ACC tournament for the first time ever, and then your first ACC baseball title of any kind, if I'm not mistaken. In about 60 years?
60 years, that's right. Yeah. So it all sounds good, right? 33 wins, an ACC championship, another trip to the NCAA tournament. But I think probably you've heard this from a lot of coaches. Don't want to ever have to go through another season like 2021. It was challenging in so many ways, trying to navigate COVID, and it placed a big strain on our players. And I tell people, that the year was really a grind in so many ways. And we were struggling for most of the year. We didn't get hot until early May, and then, went on a terrific run through the end of the regular season into the ACC tournament. But up until that point had been really up and down throughout the year. And I think a big part of our ups and downs would just dealing with the stress and strain of COVID and being away from family and all the things that went into making sure last year that you could get through the season. But that's what in my mind makes the ACC championship run so rewarding, is that it was a great way to reward our guys for being resilient. Our guys were really resilient to stay in the fight, even when we were struggling and dealing with all the COVID stuff. And they stuck together and stayed committed to each other in the program and had a great run there at the end.
I know here just a little over a week ago, as we're recording this on Monday, the 24th of January, you had, in addition to your coaching staff, a guy who's very familiar with the ACC, having played at Notre Dame from 2017 to 2021. He spent the fall in the volunteer role up at NIU. Daniel Jung is your new director of ops.
Yeah, really excited that Danny's joined our program. Yeah, knew him well as a player at Notre Dame. He comes in incredibly highly recommended by Mick Ioki, who recruited him to Notre Dame and coached him his first 3 years there, and then Link Jarrett, who coached him the last 2 years. And of course, he was a part of that tremendous ACC regular season champion program last year they had. And, he brings a lot of experience in the ACC, terrific on the data and analytics side, a young guy with a lot of energy, really hungry to learn. And I think that was the thing, Bubba, that impressed me the most. He's a guy that just has a real love for learning the game. He's a student of the game, and he's a real sponge, and he's already a positive addition. Certainly, we wish Chris O'Neill well. Chris did a great job in the year he was with us in that operations role, and he moved on, and now he's in a full-time recruiting and hitting coach position at George Washington University. So a great opportunity for him to keep climbing the ladder. I told Danny, you look at the guys that have come to Duke and been in our ops position and what they've gone on to do. Patrick O'Grady's now a scout with the Seattle Mariners. Chris Gordon, of course, who took over for Patrick, is now on our staff as our pitching coach. And, most recently, Chris O'Neill, who moved into a recruiting role at George Washington. It's been a position on our staff that's had a lot of upward mobility. And I have no doubt that Danny will come in here and do a great job for a couple of years and then take that next step up the ladder.
Yeah, as far as Danny's concerned, I'm glad you brought it up as far as the analytic side of the game. Obviously, that's been a growing trend in recent seasons, and I noticed that he had a master's in business analytics from Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was something that jumped out to me too, Bubba. You know, it's got two Notre Dame degrees, and you know that certainly having a background in the business analytics side. You know, the operations position. You know, you have to have some business savvy. You're essentially, you know, running a budget. You're doing our travel. You're coordinating our meals and buses and hotels and flights. So you're managing a big part of our operating expenses. But at the same time, we wanted somebody in that role who really is passionate about the baseball side of things and can add value from video breakdown to helping us dive deeper into the TrackMan data, Blast and Oculus and all the different technology that we're using nowadays to help these players develop. And Danny certainly is chomping at the bit to dive into that.
Before we dive into your highly touted recruiting class that ranked 10th nationally, and let's talk about what returns. So you have 27 letter winners coming back, including a third-team All-ACC outfielder, R.J. Schreck, who hit .337, 18 bombs, and 52 runs driven in.
Yeah, so RJ comes back, starting left fielder, really can stabilize the middle of our lineup, along with Chris Crabtree, who's a guy that I feel like he's been around for about 10 years. Fifth-year senior, had 13 home runs last year. Will Hoyle, who started a good bit at second base, is back as a fifth-year senior as well. And then a guy to really keep your eye on positionally, Graham Pauley, who, you know, I really felt like was a breakout candidate for us last year. Got off to a slow start, kind of worked his way out of the lineup, and then over the last month of the season worked himself back into the lineup and was a really key contributor down the stretch for us as we made that run. Had a great summer, Triple Crown winner in the Sun Belt Collegiate League, came back, had a terrific fall, and he's a guy that's going to, you know, provide some punch to the lineup as well. So you've got, you know, really 3-4 veteran bats that are back, but when you think about experience for us, it really starts on the mound. You know, we had so many guys that are back from that run last year that are seasoned and better for the experience. You've got some of that guy, old guard like Cooper Stinson, who's been a starter in this program since 2019. You've got Matt Dockman and Jimmy Loper, two guys that have been key contributors out of the bullpen for us for the last 3 years. And then Marcus Johnson and Luke Fox, who by the end of the year were the best two pitchers on our staff. And you know, Luke moved into the rotation for us late April last year and pitched great down the stretch, wound up being named a freshman All-American. And Marcus was just unbelievable out of the backside of the bullpen as a stopper, appeared in all 4 games in the ACC tournament. And we don't get that far if it wasn't for the job that Marcus did out of the bullpen for us. He really held it together for us in a lot of ways. And we had to jump on his back at times last year. But, you know, the plan is for Marcus to move into the rotation. And Luke is obviously back in the rotation. You got a guy like Cooper Stinson, who's a veteran, experienced starter. Billy Seidel, a guy that really came on late in the year, coming out of Tommy John, is back and has thrown really well. So you added him into that mix. And so we really like the depth of our pitching staff, and we like the experience of our pitching staff as well.
You talk about those guys that you have those high expectations for and are a bit more proven. If you would, you know, who are an arm or two that maybe didn't see a whole lot of mound time a season ago, but could potentially see a significant number of innings this year?
Yeah, great question. So two guys that jump out to me, Adam Boucher, who's got a really big arm, up to 96, 97 miles an hour, really had to work on harnessing it last year, getting back in the zone. Went and had a great summer in the NECBL, was actually, I think, the top pro prospect in the NECBL, and was shut down for the early part of our fall, through great late in the fall for us. Has looked good early on. I think he could be a guy that really jumps into a much bigger role. Another guy to keep your eye on has yet to throw an inning in our program yet, despite being a junior in the classroom. That's Michael Fultz. You know, he hadn't pitched in 2020 when COVID hit, although he probably was working his way really into the mix out of the pen when the pandemic shut that season down. had an unbelievable fall of 2020, and then sustained an injury and missed all of the spring of 21, and missed a good chunk of this fall as well, but has looked terrific coming out of the winter break. And he's a left-hander that can really spin it. It's got two distinct breaking balls that can both produce a swing and a miss. So that's another guy to keep an eye on out of our pen.
A few minutes ago, I referenced that excellent recruiting class. You have 16 guys coming in, 12 from the high school ranks, and then 4 grad transfers. If you would, start off with those 4 grad transfers that are entering your program.
Yeah, John Natoli was the preseason Ivy League Pitcher of the Year in 2020. Actually pitched against us early in 2020. A lot of people probably forget about it because of the pandemic, but we played Cornell 2 weekends before the regular season got shut down, and he was actually a starter on that Cornell team in 2020. Pitched 5 shutout innings against us on that Sunday. Was committed to come play with us last year, and then had Tommy John. So essentially took a gap year to rehab, worked out at Eric Cressy's place down in Florida all last year. Had a great fall, throws a ton of strikes, really, really good changeup. He's a guy that can really factor into the mix for us as well. Trevor Johnson was the number 1 pro prospect in the Ivy Leagues 3 or 4 years ago, and then between COVID and some injuries, just hadn't had really any time on the field. And you could tell that when he got here this fall, had a lot of rust to work off, and has really done so. And really has looked good here in the preseason for us, hitting the ball with more power, moving good. He's in really good shape physically. Chris Davis is a name to keep keep an eye on. A guy that was with us last year, but has an opportunity to play maybe a bigger role this year with some graduation and some guys moving on to the draft in the outfield. Guy that plays with tremendous energy, brings that contagious energy to the ballpark with him every single day. And then a guy that's familiar to local college baseball fans, Caleb Mccroy, who had a great career at North Carolina Central. Left-handed pitcher who pitched out of the bullpen for them. Really, really electric stuff. He came in and pitched against us last year in 2021 at the DBAP. Struck out the side. He's really tough on left-handers, kind of has a crossfire delivery. And he's a guy that can really factor in for us out of the pen as well.
On the high school side of things, which of those young men, have an opportunity to potentially get on the field early?
Yeah, a bunch of them, Bubba. I tell you, you look at the lineup that we put out there on the field this fall against Davidson and NC State in our 2 fall exhibitions. We had 4 freshmen on the field at the same time. Especially if you count Luke Storm, who was a redshirt last year and is a redshirt freshman this year and had a tremendous fall and could be a real breakout candidate for us. Certainly Alex Mooney comes in with a lot of height from his high school career. Really good defender, can run, handles the bat well, has surprising power for his size. He's just a really skilled player and plays with a lot of confidence and plays with an edge. And he's done a great job. Had a great fall. Actually had an OPS over 1,000 for the fall. Jonathan Santucci, who's a 2-way player out of Massachusetts, left-handed pitcher, was up to 95 this fall. He's going to factor in for us on the mound and certainly competing for a starting job in the outfield. Has some real power in the bat, has some of the best bat speed on the team. So just tremendous physical tools. Devin Obie is also an outfielder out of Nashville, Tennessee. Really athletic, has tremendous raw power. Got to cut down on the swing and miss a little bit, but he's a guy that can factor in for us this spring. And then another player out of Nashville, catcher, Andrew Yu. He has really, really good defensive skills and certainly is pushing for time behind the plate this year, even as a true freshman.
Lastly, let's take a look at your schedule. Obviously you have the always challenging ACC, and I want you to talk about who you have coming to Durham. But of the non-conference slate, that early season, I think it's week 2, going to Baylor for 3 games against a Big 12 foe jumped out. Yeah,
Baylor is going to be really good, and we need that trip, Bubba. I mean, we've got to challenge ourselves a little bit there early in the non-conference, especially on the weekend, to get ready for ACC play. As far as coming to Durham to play us in the ACC, I think UVA and Carolina travel into Durham this year. Notre Dame is another one that will travel in and play us here. We've got Miami at home as well. The league's going to be stacked as usual. I look for Florida State, to be in a lot of preseason publications, the team to beat in our league. They've just got tremendous pitching back. They're a very deep pitching staff with a tremendous 1-2 punch at the top of their rotation with Parker Messick and Bryce Hubbard. So, NC State's another team that we play at home that's certainly very, very talented. They're going to be a little different this year because they're a little younger positionally, but they're a little more experienced on the mound, kind of like us. But they look very good when we had the exhibition against them at the DBAP this fall. And our non-conference is just grueling. 2 games with East Carolina, in some publications, a top 10 team in the country. 2 games with Liberty, who's a top 25 team in a lot of publications. Campbell University's getting a lot of recognition as a fringy top 25 program. So there's 6 games right there in the non-conference that are just grueling in the midweek. And we're going to have to be good at getting off the mat, Bubba, because you play an ACC slate that beats you up already, and then you got teams like ECU and Campbell and Liberty in the midweek. There's not a lot of time to catch your breath. And so, you're going to take some gut punches along the way, but you got to be good at getting up off the mat and continuing to move forward. And fortunately for us, I think we've got tremendous leadership this year, and I think we'll be good at that.
With all the excellent programs throughout the region, definitely very easy to schedule well, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's too well, too well. As I look at our schedule this year, I'm like, good gravy. We could have softened it just a little bit, but hey, that's what you do this for. It's a lot of fun, and every weekend and every week in the midweek, you're playing somebody that can beat you, and you got to play well.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate your time this morning. Best of luck this season. We look forward to having you back on the program down the road.
Great to catch up with you, Bubba. Look forward to talking again throughout the course of the season.